All right, hey everyone, thank you so much. I believe this is my 5th time here at BitBlockBoom. I only missed the very first one because at that time I was just trying to put together my own conference at the same time, not on the same day, but the same year. And I see 25 minutes on the clock. I am going to jump right into my presentation. I bet a lot of people are familiar with my work. Let's do it this way. How many people actively watch my channel today, and please be honest? Raise your hand. All right. How many people have used to watch my channel like 3-4 years ago? It should be a lot more hands going up. All right. Awesome. Okay, my name is Vays. I'm not going to talk about myself much. Now, I do recommend everyone come and sit as close to the stage as possible. There are Easter eggs in the presentation, and whoever gets the answer will get a prize. The prize is going to be a free entry to Unconfiscatable, and I have a secondary prize. I have a hardware wallet. I know you're not supposed to accept hardware wallets from others, but it is a Jade wallet in its original packaging. All right. I'm Vays. Gary, thank you so much for inviting me back to BitBlockBoom. I was on a hiatus because I spoke a few times in a row, and now I'm back to speaking again after not speaking for a few years. So the Easter egg in the presentation is this logo. It's the Unconfiscatable logo. Takes place in Las Vegas. When you see it in the slides, that's one. So you count how many times this logo appears. I'll help you guys with the first one, and then you guys will have to add them up. It's also make sure that people pay attention to the slides. All right. So my presentation today is the bullish case for Bitcoin. Most of my videos are about the price of Bitcoin, and I'm going to stick with that for this presentation. Here's the entire history of the price of Bitcoin up until a few weeks ago. I don't have that last drop. I'm trying to forget that it ever happened. And the most recent one, oh man, the bull market has to start soon. So the presentation is going to be about. And let me get that out of the way there. And when I started this presentation, I started doing this presentation around 2015. It was different. I always alter it, but I always have the price history in the background. So it's awesome to watch the chart just go up and to the right, and eventually it will be further up and further to the right. And so I'm going to go through all of the major, I guess, memorable reasons for me personally that caused the price of Bitcoin to jump up each step of the way, and also some of the reasons that created some of these tops that we had in Bitcoin. So from the very beginning, we're going to go over to Australia, and the very first time Bitcoin was mentioned as a use case was when Satoshi mentioned it as potentially taking donations for WikiLeaks, okay? And that jumped the price to about 10 cents. And by the way, this is your first hint. There it is. There's the logo. It's going to show up a little bit differently all the time. But count how many of these you see as the presentation goes on. It's about 100 slides. And I only have 21 minutes now, so here we go. The next major use case was, of course, Silk Road. Silk Road helped bump the price to a couple of bucks. And then thanks to our very own Chuck Schumer over in New York, he helped bump that price all the way to $30 when he went on TV complaining about Silk Road. In an amazing feat of 60 seconds, he taught people to buy their drugs online with Bitcoin using Tor, a feat that has never, ever been conquered, by the way. He managed to do it in 60 seconds. It was absolutely incredible. And this brings us all the way back to 2013. And for me personally, this is what gotten me thinking about Bitcoin. I heard about it from Max Kaiser back in 2011, 2012, watching RT, but that didn't do it. It was the Cyprus banking incident in 2013. How many of you remember that? When the government simply decided to confiscate 50% of everyone's money in their bank account above 100,000 euro. It wasn't exactly 50%, it was 47.5%. They wanted to, be under that 50 mark. And that what made me realize that you need to store your money in something that's unconfiscatable. And that's how the whole idea of Unconfiscatable came about. I ended up getting the domain and then eventually did something with it. So Oh, wait, let me get that out of the way. And unconfiscatability is super important. Besides what happened in Cyprus, also in general, the concept of civil asset forfeiture has actually confiscated way more money than criminals and burglars have. It flipped it in 2014. In 2014, the government confiscated $5 billion, and robbers and criminals had only stolen about $4 billion. And that ratio is only going up. It's just hard to get statistics. The latest statistic I have is since 2000, the states have confiscated almost $69 billion that the authors were able to find, the researchers, and that's not even every state publishes this data. So it's a ridiculous amount of money being confiscated, which is why you need to store your wealth in something that's unconfiscatable. It is only unconfiscatable if you protect it properly, which is why the government was able to seize 144,000 Bitcoin when they shut down Silk Road. So these are some of the really big events. And of course, at the very, very tops, we have big crashes of scams. It's as I was doing this presentation, I'm actually discovering it. Wow, you can almost identify the bottom of the price of Bitcoin and the top of the price of Bitcoin based on what is collapsing in the crypto space. And in 2013, it was, of course, the infamous Mt. Gox collapsed right at the top, and exchange goes down. You'll see this theme throughout the presentation. I'm not going to get into the details. Personally, I blame Jeb McCaleb for all of it, not Mark Karpeles. It's a good slide to maybe take a picture of, and you find out how Mark Karpeles bought Mt. Gox with 84,000 missing Bitcoin. And when he confronted Karpeles about it, who sold him Mt. Gox, the answer was, maybe you can just mine it. It's all right there in the emails, and I have no idea how Karpeles ended up in prison and McCaleb's walking around. But that was the top. What about the bottom? Well, for me personally, the biggest, most important thing at the very bottom of the 2015 bear market was the Greek banking crisis, which was absolutely insane. Those of you that followed that incident, when the Greek banks shut down, when they first shut down, people were only allowed to withdraw 60 euros per day from the ATM machines, no matter how much money they had. And after a few weeks of that insanity, the government allowed them to withdraw 420 Bitcoin for an entire week, okay? And everyone rushed to the ATM machines and in order to get their 420 euros. And this is a picture from 2015, not much different than that picture from 1907, the biggest financial crash America ever had. It was in 1907. It wasn't 1929. It was 1907. The 1907 crash directly led to the creation of the Fed. Thank you. It was that crash that led to the Fed. Okay, and these are other pictures. The 1930s. The one in the middle there, 1923, where Germans are burning money for gas. Because basically it was a better use case for money. And more recently, 2007, Zimbabwe. And these things don't stop, because here's a more recent one when we go over to Lebanon. It's just the pictures are a little different now when you can't get your money out of a bank. And that's a headline right off of CNN, where people went to their banks in Lebanon to literally get their money with a gun. And you'll see that theme throughout everything as well. So that kind of kicked off the bull market in 2016. The halvings helped. We'll get to those in a second, because one other one is coming up. But that big wave in 2017, I know there were shitcoins involved, but we're not going to talk about shitcoins. What really, really drove it? And for me, even if you go back to those videos I did in the YouTube channel, it was all about SegWit. Once it was obvious that SegWit is going to get in and that we won the block size war, the price really took off, if you go back to those exact dates. And you can see on this chart where SegWit gets adopted right there, but that blue line, that is the fees. The fees skyrocketed soon after because no one was adopting SegWit but the Bcash and the other, I think it was just Bcash at the time, they needed to spam the chain to make us look bad and how SegWit is useless. And it's actually thanks to them. Look at the SegWit adoption that started a few months after the high fees. Everyone was like, okay, I need to, I want to send my Bitcoin. And boom, there's a wave of SegWit adoption. And then SegWit adoption kind of was flattish. And then boom, you see this huge jump in SegWit adoption from 50% up to 80%? Well, that also followed another huge spike in fees. All right, Bitcoiners, what caused this giant spike to $15, $20, $30 Bitcoin fees in 2021? Not that long ago. Not having. Middle of 2021, March-ish. China, specifically. The mining ban, right? All the miners came off the network, and suddenly it was taking like 20 minutes to get a block. Perfect. Now, again, there was a spike, huge spike in fees earlier this year, and that caused SegWit adoption to go past 90%. What was that spike? Ordinals, all right? So thank you, Roger. Thank you, China. And thank you, Ordinals. Now SegWit is at over 95% on the blocks, and everyone's enjoying cheap fees again. Okay. Now we get to the top. So just like a bunch of scams, always tend to blow up at the top. I actually thought about this. I was doing this presentation like 2 days ago, and I'm like, why is everything always blowing up at the top or bottom? And if I have time, I'll give you my theory. So at the very top of the last bull market in January 2018, the market top came in December, and here comes BitConnect. Man, I was like remembering everything about BitConnect. That was insane when that thing blew up. That token was worth like $400 something. They were offering like 1% a day returns they were promising them. And people actually believed it. It was completely crazy. And 4 years later, the government finally is doing something about it. Good job. And we actually think they're going to take down Bitcoin. So here's an awesome slide. This is every shitcoin and the highest peak it ever got to. Who remembers Aurora Coin? A couple of laughs. So all of the coins and how high they got on CoinMarketCap and where they are today. And BitConnect actually made it to number 6. It was the number 6 coin by market cap. And many of these things no longer exist. A lot of them are down 100%, 98%. Bitcoin is still down 60% right now. Or, sorry, about 40, yeah, about 60% right now. When Bitcoin goes back up in the green, everything else is still going to be in the red. It's going to be awesome. That pretty much marked the top. But then there was a secondary top. There was another top in 2019 where Bitcoin just went up to 19,000 real quick. And once again, another Ponzi scam is blowing up right at the top. Helps drive the market up, and then it helped drive the market down. This was, of course, the Plus token, which didn't get a lot of attention in the US, but it was huge in China. It was $3 billion, and it was all about Bitcoin. They were actually using Bitcoin. You know, unlike FTX, who never apparently held a single Bitcoin. But in this case, they really were using Bitcoin. And as it was collapsing, people were making excuses. And great comment over here, if I can read it. Now that Bitcoin's collapsing, while it should be going parabolic with the world financial and civil turmoil, do you understand your money is gone? They are dumping your stolen coins at a rate of $1 million every few minutes on Binance and causing the collapse of the crypto market. You people are just too stupid to realize how stupid you are to think crypto can pay interest. And of course, this is around the time when Celsius launched. But that was a great comment from earlier than that. And then another thing that marks like the very end of markets tends to be blow-ups of hedge funds. Unfortunately for one of these, it was friends of mine, over at Adaptive. But that crash, the COVID crash, was really, really painful, and hedge funds tend to crash. And after the next top and bottom, I'm going to give you my theory as to why things tend to do that at the very end. So great for us Bitcoiners. After that 2020 crash, we went up really, really quickly. And some of that has to do with all the money printing the Fed did. People don't realize 25% of all US dollars were printed in 1 year in 2020. 2020 alone printed 25%. It's like Ethereum printing 70% of all Ethereum on day one, right? US government printed 25% of all dollars in 2021. Absolutely awesome. That helped us a lot. The Fed still has all these charts for us. We can always look for. Now, to me, one of the biggest drivers of the 2021 bull market, and I didn't even realize it till later, was, of course, GBTC. The amount of Bitcoin GBTC with Grayscale and Barry Silver were purchasing, they were purchasing twice the average daily mined volume of Bitcoin and locking it up in the trust. Okay? Imagine for an entire year, twice the average mined Bitcoin, one person was buying all that Bitcoin. And that was going into the trust. Okay? Now everyone's upset that the value of the tokens is way below the par value. But if it was a normal ETF, keep this in mind, free market has a way of balancing out. If that was a normal ETF and the price of Bitcoin is going down, the ETF is selling the Bitcoin, driving the price of Bitcoin lower, right? GBTC doesn't sell the Bitcoin. It's still locked up there, right? Those are some of us GBTC holders for retirement purchases are more in the red on that position, but at least the Bitcoin wasn't sold. So the bear market in Bitcoin could have been a little bit worse. So that's good news. And another big element of 2021 was companies started to purchase Bitcoin. Of course, it was kicked off with MicroStrategies and then Tesla. Tesla bought 48,000 Bitcoin. Clearly, they didn't have any strong hands. They already dumped 75% of that. Square is still holding on to theirs. And MicroStrategy still at the top. They bought more. They went from like 90,000 Bitcoin when I made the slide the first time. Now they're at 152. Can we please stop letting Michael Saylor buy all the Bitcoin? You know, if the price is higher, it'll be harder for him to buy it. So, all right. And also helping to drive the market was, of course, the adoption of Bitcoin in El Salvador was absolutely awesome. The bear market's not helping. They're so far the first country, but there's going to be more. United States still has a bunch. I'm not sure about that Ukraine number, but they're not holding Bitcoin for the right reasons. You know, they're holding them because they stole them from people. El Salvador confiscated them from people. Better coin securities needed. But El Salvador got it properly. Okay, and wow, I only have 6 minutes left. I have to speed it up. And of course, when you start Googling, I Googled in 2021, and how many other countries are thinking about it? And there's definitely a few countries that are probably going to get on board once the price goes up. Now, let's talk about a few more factors that are really, really critical for Bitcoin's history. Of course, we all know about Canada and why Bitcoin is so important. And this, I'm going to go through these slides a little bit faster now. And these are my use cases for Bitcoin and what's going to drive the price significantly higher. The confiscation of wealth, again, unconfiscatability. When the Russia-Ukraine situation broke out, wealth was confiscated, but guess what? They couldn't confiscate the Bitcoin if you held it properly. And now countries are getting kicked off the global financial system, and that's another reason why eventually countries will have to adopt it. And here we are, the bottom of the bear market. Right near the bottom, Celsius implodes, and a few months later, of course, FTX implodes as well. And this was the last big one. And I'm still waiting on Binance, but that is likely to be the big one. And more recently, once again, the banking stuff. Nigel Farage loses his bank account. You guys are all familiar with that. Okay, so in my last 5 minutes, we're going to go into the future. What do I see going forward? Well, the best time to buy Bitcoin from the halving cycle perspective has slightly passed, but you're still very, very close to it. So these are all 4 halving cycles, and they line up pretty damn well as to where a good 6-month period is to really catch the bottom of the price of Bitcoin. And slightly zoomed in to get rid of that very first one. The very first halving cycle, those first 4 years, are a little bit tricky. This graph is a little bit cleaner now. So I do believe that 15,000 number is here to stay. And I don't think there is a lot of downside left for Bitcoin, and we are in the up trajectory. But keep in mind, there's always some kind of drop right before the halving. So just keep that in mind. Now, here's one of my favorite metrics. The number of wallets with one full Bitcoin in them. This is the middle class. People are able to save up $20,000, $30,000. And this is the Bitcoin that they're holding for the long term. Wallets with one Bitcoin. This number is still going up. And if you can afford one Bitcoin, you can probably save and afford 2 Bitcoin at current prices. Okay? So this is an incredible metric that takes Bitcoin off the market. Another favorite metric of mine is lightning capacity, but it's gone down. This is probably what just contributed.
Grandpa, why do you have so much Bitcoin?
Well, it all started in the year 2023 when I attended a conference called BitBlockBoom.
What's BitBlockBoom, Grandpa?
It was a conference where people talked about Bitcoin. This was way back when we used something called the US dollar for money.
What? Bitcoin wasn't always the world's money?
If it weren't for great speakers at BitBlockBoom like Jimmy Song, Adam Curry, and Preston Pish, we'd all be living in pods and eating bugs. Instead, I was able to avoid fiat enslavement and secure generational wealth.
F***ing legend.
Be the legend your grandchildren deserve. Experience the best Bitcoin conference out there and join the Bitcoin revolution. BitBlockBoom, the only conference for true Bitcoin maximalists. Book your tickets today at bitblockboom.com and use the code BBB1 for a special discount.